especially coming from a SKELEC standpoint, and I have a very familiar face to the radio live. I have a very familiar face. She's not a stranger. This morning I have Miss Clarissa Langley Stevens, and everybody knows her as the lady that deals with disaster. Ms. Stevens is the Safety and Security Manager at SKELEC. Ms. Stevens, how are you this morning?
Good morning. I'm fine, thank you, and I'm happy to be here yet again on Power Talk.
Thank you for coming. This morning we'll be discussing International Day for Disaster Risk Management. Specifically, the theme is centered around empowering the next generation for a resilient future. So, Ms. Stevens, with your background, can you explain to us the importance of International Day of Disaster Risk Reduction? Now it's surrounding the theme of the next generation.
All right, thank you so much for that, Ms. Hendrickson. International Day for Disaster Risk Reduction, or International Day for IDDR, as we refer to it in shortened form, is really an opportunity celebrated globally on the 13th of October, which was Sunday, but SKELEC, being the responsible corporate company that we are, we always use the opportunity to ensure that we align with our stakeholders' interests, because it's a part of our efforts as well. As a company and as the lone energy company, we believe that it is within our best interest to educate persons as to how important it is to be able to reduce our risk around us. But first, to be able to reduce them, you have to be educated on what those risks are. I think the service that we provide is actually one of our biggest risks, because electricity is invisible, but it has a lot of power, for lack of a better word, and it's also very dangerous, and so that puts the risk of just working with energy, especially on the technical side, a lot higher on the scale as it relates to how we want our workers and our customers to understand the dangers of electricity. So we are very happy each year to use the opportunity to highlight the risks surrounding electricity, and to join the global celebration and recognition of IDDR. And when something is branded at the international level, you know that there is a lot of education and awareness material that surrounds that. And there are some key stakeholders in St. Kitts and Nevis that we as SKELEC continue to partner with to make sure that the message gets across. So we're very happy to be a part of this conversation this morning, especially from the Safety and Security Department standpoint.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Stevens, for explaining to us the importance of the team, especially for SKELEC. So what proactive disaster risk reduction measures does SKELEC have in place to ensure electricity supply during storms and other natural disasters?
Okay, that's a good question. Risk is all around us. If you don't know it's a risk, you would probably just behave careless. However, with the establishment in 2022 of the Safety and Security Department, SKELEC would have demonstrated that we take safety to be our number one priority. And once you have a specific unit giving attention to risk factors, it's also very easy to start developing strategies and policies and procedures to be able to guide workers and anyone that we engage that come across being in an environment where the risk profile is very high. We are naturally that type of company, and so it is important for us to establish these programs, but not just establish them, to make sure that those on the end users, our workers, our contractors, our customers, that they understand that these measures are in place. We do a lot of that in our preparedness and mitigative phases, where we do education sessions, training sessions, and where we can partner with and using forums such as these to be able to educate the public on what's happening internally. So over the last couple of months, the department in partnership with other internal departments, would have been coming up with protocols and procedures to be able to ensure that our risk profile is, one, understood, two, that whenever we develop any document to guide, that it's one of resilience, thus the word bold and underlining the theme, resilience. And that means it makes us, it bolsters us or make the efforts more robust in terms of how we treat the risk, how we respond to the risk, how we avoid the risk where we can, and how we reduce the risk that is associated with the service that we provide.
Thank you very much. You mentioned in your explanation of the proactive measures from SKELEC about collaborating with different utilities, and I know from the communication standpoint there have been a lot of meetings that have been occurring and putting stuff in place. Can you mention or discuss how important it is to collaborate with these utility providers or government agencies or even our not local community when it comes to disaster preparedness?
Okay, thank you for that. I want to specifically highlight 3 entities that we are currently working very closely with. The first one would be NEMA, the National Emergency Management Agency, and they are the gatekeepers of the disaster management cycle that has been adopted by SKELEC to be able to ensure that our operations is continuous, because we look at our preparedness, our mitigation, our response, and of course our ability to recover. Through the experts at NEMA, we are able to continuously participate in their own programs that would help us as a company to be able to function at a national level and have access to the resources that would allow for SKELEC to more or less optimize its response capabilities. Secondly, I want to speak about our partnership with the Fire Services Department. Through those efforts, we were able to develop what we call a fire mitigation task team, with the understanding that fire is one of the known hazards that can affect our ability to produce energy. The mitigation task team is a joint effort between Fire and SKELEC, where senior management participate and represent the interests of both entities and how we can continue to coexist in our efforts. We would have done a lot of work with Fire, where we are doing some what I would refer to as very relevant type training, and something as simple as ensuring that Fire understands our operations, understand the location of our substations, understand how to basic disconnection of power from a residential or commercial property, that in the event that there is a fire, they can, you know, rapidly expedite their firefighting methods without having to look at the risk of causing an electrical fire. And so those are some of the practices that we have. And then at the regional level, through SKELEC, our parent organization, those efforts allow for our management to the stakeholder, the government, to be able to ensure that SKELEC continues to benefit from regional opportunities and programs where we engage in, and I can speak specifically to the Safety and Security Department and knowledge exchanges, where we're able to visit other utilities and to see how they're doing or what their best practices would look like, and to see if there are any takeaways that we can use for implementation here at SKELEC. And obviously we always take away the best lessons, because no two utilities are the same, and so you have to look at what works best for you. And for us in SKELEC, working with these key stakeholders, and of course there are others, it allows for us to optimize our ability to enhance and update our risk profile and align our training and development programs, as well as the resources that we need to be able to counter some of these risks.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Stevens. And we also would like to thank these partners and also the other partners that we didn't get to mention. We want to thank you for being a part and helping SKELEC in assisting, especially our Safety and Security Department, as this department has put a lot of protocols and enforcing a lot of things, especially for our guys out there in the field, because they themselves in the field are at risk. And with, as you said, the knowledge exchange and seeing, okay, what works best for SKELEC, then we also are trying our best to protect them as well, because safety is our number one priority at all times.
That's right.
So, Mrs. Stevens, can you share any recent examples or any examples where SKELEC worked together with other companies during a disaster situation, how the response effort benefited us at SKELEC?
Okay. Thank you for that. I guess I'm going to have to go back to our experience with Tropical Storm Ernesto, because that is the most recent and it's very relevant, noting that we normally share this conversational platform with NEMA, and I know NEMA would have made representation through its efforts for hurricane preparedness and response. Now, as a company, because hurricanes and tropical cyclones in general are a part of the risk profile for SKELEC, because our infrastructure is not on the ground entirely, we run the risk that once we are exposed, that we will sustain some level of damage. The dependency, however, of getting our supply back quickly is dependent on our teams. And one of the things that I think people may lose sight of is that we have to make sure that it is safe for our field teams to be able to go out and execute their task. Something as simple as high winds can prevent our climbers from climbing the poles to be able to start restoration efforts. Now, I think most times, and I'm saying this with much caution, that persons just want the electricity. Maybe persons are not aware as to what it entails to be able to turn the power back on. But at the end of the day, SKELEC as a company has to be responsible as well to protect the integrity of the grid, which is an aging grid, and so we have to, use extra caution, like looking after a baby. Ernesto also showed us that when we are in restoration phase, the process should not be rushed, because with downlines and all of those things, our workers have to conduct the assessments first and then execute the restoration efforts. For me, having field officers from the safety department to be out there monitoring and evaluating and providing guidance and support while ensuring that there is compliance with the company's standard, I think that experience in and of itself shows that we understand the risk and we understand the importance of the supply, but we also understand that we have to put safety as our number one priority as we continue to elaborate in the company. And so sometimes we may not meet the expectations of the customers, but I think if they understand that we were putting these extra measures in place for preservation of life and sustainability of the supply, while ensuring that when we execute our duties we do it as safely as possible, I think that would be understood. And I say it's just a matter of continuous education to the public or our customers to be able to ensure that they understand that we want your supply to be back, but we want our workers to go home to their families as well.
Thank you. We all want to go home safely.
Yes.
So, Mrs. Stevens, in keeping with the theme that says empowering the next generation for a resilient future, how has SKELEC began educating young people about disaster risk reduction and how important is their involvement in this?
So through partnership with your department, the corporate communications team and safety, we find ourselves visiting schools, primary and secondary levels, to participate in their career fairs. And when we're talking about next generation, when we take what we do to the students, I believe that's an excellent start. And believe it or not, sometimes when we go into the school, some of these children, their parents work at the company and they have a pretty good idea because they see the uniform, they see the boots, they see the outfits, and they understand that, you know, mommy or daddy works at SKELEC, and they ask questions. And so when we go with our materials, because when we go to the schools, we take academic materials that we can talk about. For example, I know that we take our hard hats. And I think a lot of people don't understand that the color of a hard hat means something. And so if parents go home and ask the children to the schools that we've been, what does the yellow hat mean? Who wears the red hat? You know, things of that nature. They would recognize that there is education just within the display. Why do we wear safety boots? Children often ask whenever I am exposed to these career fairs or having to do talks in schools, and so through our efforts where we would have had several of our engineers gone into the school system to talk about engineer as a career choice as it relates to the energy sector, I find that a lot of the high school students, engineering is so far-fetched. They are not aware that you can work in the company that provides electricity and be an engineer, or you can be a customer service rep, because all they attach it to is the people who climb the poles. And so for us going out to these fairs and taking our resource and our uniforms, especially our PPEs and PPWs, who wear what, why they wear it, and so forth, I think that provides an excellent opportunity for us to educate the next generation as to what SKELEC does and how important it is for us to do it as safely as possible. I also believe that through our efforts, through our campaigns and conversations that we are having, not only with students but with even electricians, now that we've done the metering standards and we have to educate persons as to the expectation of SKELEC when we go to check the meter. This is what we expect to see, because if it is done this way, it provides a safer working environment for our electricians when they go to make the attachment and the connections and so just through these efforts, as the case may be. And I want to take it a step further by saying, even through our participation in simulation exercises and drills, I mean, the lessons learned that come back even from the workers or the onlooking public, it speaks volume to us having the conversation of resilience, while at the same time empowering another generation to understand what we do and giving them the opportunity to realize that they are the ones who are going to come and take over from us, because I'm not always going to be the safety and security manager. I must make room for a younger generation, but it is important that they understand at a very early age what is required to become that person and how you can enhance and build on what would have been left.
I share the same sentiment with you, and even from the communications end, when we go to these career fairs, sometimes we are surprised with the questions these children ask, and we'll even be surprised that they know the answers about the hard hats, and they're asking questions about the men climbing the poles. They're asking, well, why you have to wear these shoes and what are these goggles for, and all these pieces. And when we explain to them the importance of them, they actually understand and say, I can go home and tell my mommy and daddy. Right. And even when we teach them simple electrical safety tips, or we tell them, they will. This common question they always ask about the electricity and why the lights flickering, and even when we explain to them, we tell them, okay, well, tell mommy or daddy call and let us know, because our customers are eyes, because we at SKELEC can't be there at all time to see everything. And they will actually go and they'll call their parents, mommy, tell the call SKELEC what is it. So it's a pleasure from the company's standpoint to see the younger generation learning about the different things about SKELEC, especially the safety things as well.
Yes.
And we do enjoy seeing their face light up as well. So, Mrs. Stevens, what advice would you give to families or young people to better prepare for potential disasters?
Having a family plan, because planning changes the dynamics of the readiness to be able to face any hazard or disaster. it's if we fail to plan, we are probably planning to fail. And I always say a plan doesn't have to be a thick document. It's just jotting down or noting the important roles of each individual and the important things that you want persons to remember to do, the resources that you need and where they are and things of that nature, important contact numbers, etc., etc. So I think just having a plan allows you, and not just having the plan, because some people have a plan and the rest of the family have no idea what the plan is, and it's unfortunate because we have to educate each other if we want everybody to play a meaningful role in just moving that plan forward to execution.
Thank you, Mrs. Stevens. So we'd like to thank Mr. Bradshaw for joining us from NEMA. So, Mr. Bradshaw, as the Deputy Disaster Coordinator, can you give us your perspective on what advice would you give families and young people to better prepare for potential disasters?
Well, as Mrs. Langley Stevens said, it's very important to first of all, before I continue, let me apologize for being late.
That's no problem.
I had an emergency and I had to deal with that. So I'm Julian Bradshaw, of course. I'm the National Disaster Coordinator Deputy. So I'm glad to be here and really appreciate the gesture.
Thank you for coming.
Yes. So basically, as Mrs. Langley Stevens said, one of the critical areas or things that we must focus on is basically to develop an emergency plan. That is an important component to actually mitigate against disaster and so forth, and to basically protect your families. One thing that I want to stress is that traditionally persons always think, when they think of disasters, they think about hurricanes, and that is the approach that we're trying to lessen or decrease, or the mindset we're trying to change. Hazards, basically, the approach we want to take is a multi-hazard approach. So we're focusing on not only hurricanes, but we're focusing on volcanic activities, earthquakes, both man-made disasters as well as natural disasters. So you develop a plan around mitigating against disasters around all those factors. So an important thing of your plan is to designate a meeting place. So if there is a disaster, okay, we have to meet in this area. That's something important, and ensure that all of the family members know where this point is. It kind of brings me back to a story that Miss Langley Stevens actually told me when we were she did a presentation at my previous work environment, and I don't know if she mentioned it, here, but there was this story in Trinidad where a family had a fire, and the persons basically, they all died like right in front of the door because they had some challenges with getting out and so forth. And these are things where you should install in your family members. So if there is like a key to open the door, make sure that all of them know where the key is. So if someone, the leader of the family, gets damaged or whatever, they could actually evacuate the building. And so as I say, the main takeaway from this is to develop a family emergency plan and ensure that everyone in the family is aware of the plan.
Thank you, Mr. Bradshaw. And I think also to add, I think sometimes as adults we tend to underestimate children because we think, okay, they're small, they can't open the door, but surprisingly
They can.
in a disaster emergency we realize, they can open the door. So I think not because a child may be under the age of 18 we should underestimate the capabilities. Still educate them, still inform them. This is, I remember when I was younger, Miss Stevens has always said the muster point. Remember the muster point, remember where to go, what to do, how to do, and at least if a child remember, okay, when something happened I need to run up the road by this house or by this field. At least as a parent now you can know, okay, I didn't see my child where they went, maybe I was at work. At least when they go to this area they can know that, okay, my child is there and they are safe. So never underestimate a child. They're very, very intelligent. So Mrs. Stevens, How does SKELEC ensure that its employees, particularly the frontline workers such as the line workers, are adequately prepared and trained?
Okay. So we analyze the internal processes, the tasks that are assigned to our teams, and as a department, we design training programs around every aspect. For example, last year we were very proud to host the first safety rodeo, and what that did, it gave the general public an opportunity to see our workers operating, actually climbing a pole, while at the same time understanding that when they climb, they have to climb in accordance with rules and regulations that strongly supports best practices of safety. So it was not just for climbing. I remembered after the event, somebody sent a video where they were doing the precision exercise, and they were throwing a basketball to each other, and somebody said, "SKELEC over, frigate bear playing with a basketball, and my power off." And I said, sometimes when we lack the knowledge, it's easy to assume, but if the general public understood how important it is for our workers to get precision into their efforts, it reduces a lot of things that can go wrong while they're up on the pole. So it's the climbing, securing themselves safely, using the proper harness and safety gears, positioning themselves where they don't slip and fall, ensuring that they're wearing the safety wears. And so our teams go through rigorous training with the senior officers out in the field monitoring, and with safety as the enforcers. I think that our field teams, through all of these efforts, are adequately equipped to be very alert of the work environment and the risk around them, and to be able to practice safety at all times. And I can tell you that I've seen such a change in the heightened awareness of safety in every aspect of our operation to our frontline workers. And safety will continue to evolve, have the programs evolve and enhance where we need to, so to the benefit of our employees.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Stevens. And just to add with you, also from the communications end, we have seen a change in the guys, especially when it comes to safety. They are more alert and more vigilant of different threats or risks, and they, especially with their PPEs, they don't leave the yard without those PPEs because of the different stages we have went through with the guys and the different things we have implemented them, even with having just workshops and normal one-on-one conversations, they realize the importance of it and why is it so important, because around the Caribbean they can see why it's important, because we have seen different disasters happen to our sister islands. GQ, do we have any callers at this time? We have one? Okay, so we don't have any callers. So as we wrap up, in keeping with the theme, what key areas where SKELEC and NEMO will be focusing to enhance resilience, and how the younger generation can get involved in building a more disaster-ready community?
Okay, so basically resilience is basically being able to bounce back from any sort of adversity. And in order to do that effectively, there are certain things that you could put in place to ensure that this happens. One thing that we want to pay special attention to is climate change adaptation. With all of the adverse effects, with all of the increased hurricanes, with all of the earthquake activities that are occurring and so forth, these are some areas that you would want to focus on and mitigating against the effects of these. So one thing that you could put in place is basically improving whatever infrastructure we have around. So if it's we're building a new home, consider making it earthquake resistant. Maybe instead of using the traditional materials that we use on roofs and so forth, consider something that is like hurricane resistant. And so design it in a way that it could withstand more intense hurricane effects and so forth. When it comes to agriculture, you want to focus on planting crops that are more drought resistant, probably, crops that could withstand maybe a specific type of pest. You know, so these are all some things that you could do. Coastal protection, maybe building seawalls. You know, you're just doing things to basically adapt to how the climate is changing, and this basically are how you will basically promote resiliency. All right.
Thank you, Mrs. Steve.
One of the things that I think most people lose sight of is that our field teams work outside, and they have to endure all of the elements. Over the last couple of months, we would have seen our teams exposed to the Saharan dust, the heat waves, and I think most times people just don't care what's out there as long as the electricity is on. As a company, we have a responsibility to ensure that our workers are not subject to anything that would affect their opportunity to produce. And so we have put in place the conversation of proper hydration, adjusting flexible work schedules where if it is too hot at this period, you delay and you go out when the sun, when it's cooler, to do so, ensuring that our service vehicles have water and ice on them so that proper hydration can take place. Most recent in the field, I've seen our workers had to erect tents to work on especially the underground crew because it can be very hot. I've also seen where the planning of execution of certain projects are done at a particular time where it is conducive for them to really get it done without too much exposure. We have to take the health and safety of our workers very, very important, because if our workers cannot execute their task, we cannot produce the supply. And so overall, the Safety and Security Department continues to remain vigilant and to work with all operations of SKELEC to make sure that wherever we can strengthen, we strengthen, and where we need to make adjustments, we do that, because the intention really is, at the end of the day, we must not only be the number one utility, we must also be the most resilient utility in the Caribbean. And I think we are well on our way. I think it only gets better from here. And as Mr. Batcher said, as long as we keep the changes of climate change relevant in all of our conversations and we acknowledge the changes and make the adjustments accordingly, I think we are going to be very fine. I also want to use the opportunity to thank Mr. Batcher for his partnership with NEMA, SKELEC being one of the key stakeholders with NEMA. It always allows us access to resources that we can benefit from any time of the year, and that, in and of itself is empowering to us as a company.
Thank you very much, Mr.
Yeah,
Porter.
one thing I want to make mention to speak to. Young people have a very, very important role to play when it comes to building resiliency and for sustainable reasons. One thing I want to encourage them is to always stay focused when it comes to hazards and climate change and so forth. Use their current interests and learn more about these kind of disasters and so forth. They like technology, they like to be on the internet and so forth. Take the opportunity to learn about these kind of threats, because they are the ones that are going to be here for the future. I mean, our time is basically almost up, so you all have to take the opportunity. Young people have to take the opportunity to build resiliency and to protect the earth for future generations, which is basically themselves.
That's right.
I do agree in encouraging young people to, yes, we use technology, but we can use technology in a more important way, because even scrolling through TikTok, you will see the updates from Miami and in Florida of the hurricane, the different things are going through the hurricane. Even the Sahara desert is flooding. I was surprised and all. And just to see that on a simple TikTok where we use for videos, for fun and everything. So young people, please use the technology wisely. Yes, you can use it for entertainment, but also use it for education as well, to
Yes.
inform yourself and stay informed of what's going on locally, regionally, and also internationally. Because what goes on out there can also affect us here in St. Kitts, believe it or not. We would like, on SKELEC's behalf, to thank you, Mr. Ratchell, for coming. I know that you're a very busy man, so you made it for us, so thank you very much. And we also, from the SKELEC end, we want to thank you for collaborating with SKELEC at all times and helping us even in disasters when we need your guys' assistance. It's always a call away or a message away, so thank you very much. And thank you to the other partners as well. We understand how important it is, even for the gentlemen at fire. They know if a disaster happened at point A, they know exactly where to go. They don't need to say, well, Mrs. Stevens, we're supposed to go. They know exactly where to go. So we want to thank you, thank police and all our different partners as well. Remember to stay informed. Remember, safety is our number one priority. And feel free to reach out. Our numbers are 465-2000, 465-2013, or 661-2013, and you can also contact via social media. Mr. Ratchell, you want to give out Nima's number as well?
466-5100.
Thank you. So feel free to call, and someone is always there to answer your questions. Thank you. Do have a wonderful day, and remember, safety is your number one priority. If you see it, report it, please.